Okay, awesome. Well, we wanted to start off with just comprehensive distance learning. And first, just really thank all of you for all of your hard work because we know that you are with the kids all day, actually in 3D. We're just over the screen. And we know that it's been really hard. And we also know that everyone is just doing their best to try and figure it out, both at home with kids and also here at the school with our staff.
Queremos empezar por dándole las gracias a todos ustedes, padres de familia, porque sabemos que ahorita en este aprendizaje virtual, ustedes son como los maestros de su hijo. Sabemos que es algo pesado, algo que toma mucho tiempo y esfuerzo. Así que muchísimas gracias por todo el apoyo que hacen para ayudar a sus hijos.
And I just want to remind everyone, especially as we can, we're still in distance learning right now. And I know some students are starting to kind of get to that point where it's getting harder and harder. Some students hit that very early on. But just remember that we provide a continuum of services because there's some families that want a lot and there's some families that don't want as much. And so we just want to make sure we put out there that we understand sometimes we're going to have to make hard choices about what's best for our family. And so we offer a continuum. So there's lots of small groups and there's asynchronous work and all these things. And we want to make sure that you should do as much as you can that makes sense for your child, and that no one at the school is judging if your kid can't make SEL one day, or if they need to cut back to maybe only one small group instead of 2 each day, or if your kid wants to do everything because that's what's best for them.
Nos gustaría compartir con ustedes que sabemos que estamos llegando a ese punto donde muchos estudiantes están frustrados con el trabajo, están cansados de estar pegados a la pantalla, de tener que hacer todo a distancia. Y queremos recordarles que como escuela no los vamos a juzgar a ustedes como padres de familia si deciden que quizás tienen que modificar un poquito cómo participa su hijo en su educación. So, van a haber veces donde quizás el niño no se puede presentar, van a haber veces donde quizás tienen que hacer trabajos que no son en vivo. Y queremos que sepan que nosotros entendemos dónde están ustedes, entendemos que esto es algo muy difícil y afecta no nomás a los estudiantes, pero a todos los miembros de la familia. Y nomás les sugerimos que estén en contacto con nosotros, con el maestro o maestra de su hijo o hija, y comuníquense acerca de un plan para poder apoyar a su hijo y que sea lo más exitoso que se pueda en esta situación virtual.
And I just want to remind you that we do take attendance, but there's lots of ways to get attendance throughout the week. And so if your child isn't able to engage one day, if you make sure to tell your teacher, that counts as attendance. Also counting as attendance is doing asynchronous work on Seesaw. That counts as attendance for the day. So I just want to make sure everyone knows, just because you miss a live class doesn't mean you're being counted absent. You just have to do something during the day.
También queremos recordarles que la asistencia se mira un poquito diferente en esta situación. Simplemente porque su estudiante no se presenta a una clase en vivo, no quiere decir que faltó ese día. Ustedes como padres se pueden comunicar con los maestros, decirles que su hijo o hija va a hacer un trabajo independiente y eso cuenta como asistencia. Por ejemplo, si su estudiante hace un trabajo, digamos, en CISA o hace algún trabajo en Lexia o cualquier aplicación académica, eso cuenta como asistencia. No solamente es estar en vivo.
And the last thing would just be, if you are a family who's feeling like you need to make some choices about what part or which live sessions to attend, our recommendation is to make sure you hit and go to those small group sessions, because that's where your child's getting the most support, and it's not one-on-one, but it's like, 1-on-4. So they're getting the most instruction out of those sessions. So if you're having a hard time and you have to narrow your scope of what your child is doing, we highly recommend trying to make the small groups on their schedule as the first priority.
El consejo o la sugerencia que les damos en caso de que ustedes sientan que necesitan que reducir un poquito, tienen que reducir la cantidad de participación de su estudiante, es que por favor asistan a los grupos pequeños. porque en esos grupos pequeños es donde hay menos estudiantes, su hijo o hija puede tener un poquito más tiempo con el maestro o la maestra, y así podemos quizás poder decir el tiempo más exitoso, donde va a poder brindarse más oportunidades académicas. Los grupos pequeños es nuestra sugerencia en caso de que tengan que reducir el tiempo de su hijo o hija.
So after each little subsection that we talk about, we figured we'd take questions on that section so that we don't just talk for like an hour straight and then you all are like, oh, I don't remember my question. I will just caveat this with we're talking about limited in-person instruction in Q3 later. So I don't want any questions about that yet. But if you have any questions about just specifically like how to engage or prioritize within CDL, we would take those now.
Después de cada tema de la junta, vamos a tomar una pausa para poder contestar sus preguntas, porque si no vamos a estar hablando por muchísimo tiempo y quizás se les vaya a olvidar alguna pregunta que tengan. Si vamos a contar que más tarde hablaremos un poquito más en detalle acerca de la instrucción limitada, o sea, regresando al edificio, y también acerca sobre otras cosas. Así que nomás ahorita hay que enfocarnos en cómo poder apoyar el aprendizaje virtual.
It's okay. I know you're saving all your really good questions for when I bring up reentry and limited in-person instruction. So, oh, Sarah, did you have a question about?
Well, I have more of a comment. So just to let you all know that Bernice Amaya is doing a Friday support group for parents. And I went a couple weeks ago and she helped me tremendously on Lucy's writing. So if you guys, have questions about helping your kid with any sort of learning, she is there to answer it and to give support. And, a 15-minute conversation has helped Lucy and I immensely. So I recommend going to that on Fridays at 1:30 if you guys have any questions or need help.
And we can include the link for that in this week's newsletter that comes out in case you don't have the link to get there.
Lo que compartió la señora Sarah es que la maestra Amaya tiene una junta dedicada a los padres cada viernes a la 1:30 a través de Zoom, donde ustedes pueden pedirle ayuda a ella para cómo apoyar a sus hijos. La señora Sarah compartió que la maestra le ayudó mucho a ella aprender cómo apoyar a su hija con la escritura. Y vamos a poner un enlace y un recordatorio en el boletín de esta semana.
I have a question, but I don't know. You can stop me if this is not relevant. But I do feel like what has been really interesting about distance learning is how I feel really disconnected from it. Like I don't know what's going on. And I think that Sarah, that comment about Amaya is it's like really helpful. I didn't know that was available. So I'm going to pursue that. I really appreciate the suggestion. But having a second grader who's just, not into this, I'm hoping to really focus on how to stay connected. And it would be so incredible to know what he's supposed to be learning in second grade. I don't know. Again, I don't want to dominate this with our personal triumphs and quagmires, but in general, I found myself Googling, how do you teach a second grader how to write? Because I've never done this before. And I just really am hoping to grasp some parameters on this is the goal of this. I don't know what, anyway, I'm going to turn my mic off. I think that Amaya's, that resource is terrific, but any other resources folks have on how to teach would be amazing, because I think all of us, we're all just doing our best, and it's a garbage fire in the best of days. So anyway, thank you.
La pregunta de la señora fue que ahorita uno de los problemas con el aprendizaje virtual es qué tan desconectados estamos todos de unos a otros. Y específicamente al final ella se enfocó en que le gustaría saber, o como padres aprender, qué debe de saber un estudiante en cada grado para poder mejor apoyar a su estudiante en casa.
And I would just, that is one of the reasons Amaya actually started this group, and she's so excited because people are actually coming now. We had a couple weeks where no one showed up, but she really wants to provide that support, and she is a reading specialist and also has taught for a very long time. So she has a very extensive knowledge and wants to be there as a support for parents. So I definitely encourage that. We can also put out, I don't know how helpful this will be. It does not necessarily show you how to teach, but there is like a scope and sequence from the district that parents are able to access to see like what it is that kids should be working on. So we will work on getting that link as well. So if you're just wanting to see like topics or standards that are being covered, I think that also, if you want to try and supplement or look for things, could be helpful as well.
La respuesta de la directora fue que uno, el recurso de la maestra Maya es algo bueno que todas las familias puedan tomar ventaja. Es cada viernes a la 1:30. Y también quizás podemos compartir el documento que tiene el distrito. Es un documento de planificación donde dice qué tema tienen que aprender los estudiantes, digamos, cada mes o cada semestre, en cada materia. Así que podemos compartir ese documento para que ustedes tengan una idea de las diferentes cosas que un estudiante aprende en cada grado.
This might have already been mentioned like at the first of the year, but we're having some issues with YouTube over here. And I don't know if there's anything that we can do like as parents that have like multiple kids, and I don't want to be just watching over my 4th grader constantly on the screen. But I guess there is no way on the computers, the Chromebooks, to block YouTube, correct?
Hold on, let Jose translate that really quick and then I'll answer you.
La pregunta de la mamá es que en su casa de ella tienen un problema muy grande con el sitio de YouTube, donde sus hijos están pasando demasiado tiempo en YouTube, y ella está preguntando, ¿hay una manera que podemos bloquear ese sitio?
So I reached out about this very early on to IT and continued to send follow-up IT tickets for a very long time, and finally I got a response, which was no, but then they wrote me back and said they are in the works on adding additional parental controls. So I'm going to go back in and find out if it's completed yet and then what we need to do. And as soon as we know how to do that, we will definitely send all that information out. I think they know it's a problem and they are working on it, but there wasn't previously. I do believe there's something coming. So.
I will say when we were trying to look at a dance move, the Macarena, for one of our kinder classes, I tried to find the video from the 90s and they flagged it and said we were too young to watch it. So there must be something in the works going on.
La respuesta de la directora fue que al inicio no había una solución con este tema de cómo bloquear sitios, pero últimamente el distrito ha investigado un poquito más y sí parece que están a punto de sacar una solución. So cuando nosotros nos enteremos, les podemos compartir eso con ustedes. Lo que compartió una mamá fue que en su clase con su estudiante estaban aprendiendo el baile de la Macarena y ella buscó por el video original de los años 90 y fue bloqueado porque la cuenta del estudiante no tenía la edad suficiente para llegar a ese video. Así que quizás están empezando a hacer algo acerca de cómo bloquear algo.
I had a question. If the students end up that they're doing inappropriate searches or in their documents there's something concerning, does PPS have a system that alerts you guys on that so you're able to track it?
La pregunta fue que si un estudiante anda buscando cosas inapropiadas o tiene documentos que contienen cosas inapropiadas, si hay alguna manera que el distrito puede rastrear esa información y alertar acerca de eso.
So last year, yes, but you had to be on the same Wi-Fi network for the program that we were using. And so right now again, I think that's something that they're working on, but it is something that teachers watch for on like the Google Docs. They can't see the searches, but in terms of like in student work, we do have a protocol when we're seeing things that are concerning across any continuum of concern that students are like posting or saving in their documents and things like that. But Google searches, I don't think that that's something right now that's being monitored.
Cuando estábamos en el edificio, sí teníamos un programa donde los maestros podían ver qué estaban haciendo los estudiantes, pero ahorita como cada persona está en su casa y no está usando la misma red, no es posible hacer eso. El distrito sí guarda los sitios que un estudiante visita, pero no nos alerta si están haciendo algo inapropiado. Si un estudiante escribe algo o pone algo inapropiado en un documento de trabajo, es posible que su maestro pueda ver eso. Si eso llega a pasar, entonces sí hay un proceso de documentar eso. Pero la respuesta es que no hay muchas posibilidades para supervisar cada cosa inapropiada.
Any other questions before we move on to the next topic?
¿Alguna otra pregunta antes de que nos vayamos al siguiente tema?
Okay. I know lots of people have been asking about kinder. So I do have updated information, but I also want to let you know, I'm going to give you like dates and some details. We'll put these in the newsletter because I know nothing's written down right now. So we'll update you, but you'll also get the written details this week.
Vamos a pasar a platicar sobre kinder. Tenemos varios puntos de información que vamos a compartir con ustedes. No tenemos una presentación o algo escrito al momento, pero sí vamos a poner toda la información que compartimos ahorita, la vamos a poner en el boletín para que ustedes puedan regresar a ese documento y encontrar todas las fechas importantes y cualquier otra cosa que tienen que saber.
And so the first thing, I'm actually really excited. The district is changing, and this was not due to COVID. This was actually in the works before COVID happened, changing how Connect to Kinder works to focus schools on building community with new families that are looking to go to those schools and not just being the messenger for the district about how to do the lottery. So that's what we're trying to change. That's the change that they're trying to make with what I'm about to explain.
Megan, can you repeat that really quickly?
Sure. Just that we're trying to move kinder responsibilities to schools in terms of building community with their potential families, not being how to do the lottery and the district taking on the lottery process and us taking on just promoting our school and building community with incoming families.
So, uno de los cambios grandes es que actualmente el distrito quiere cambiar qué rol o qué papel tiene la escuela en relación a los estudiantes de kinder. So, el plan es que la escuela se va a enfocar en establecer la comunidad, poder avisar y encontrar a las familias, informarles del programa, y el distrito, o sea, la oficina central, se va a encargar un poco más de cómo dirigir las loterías, cómo dirigir la admisión a los diferentes programas de kinder.
So the new kind of timeline for how things will work is actually every single elementary school in Portland Public will post a video on February 12th to their website. And there's a template so that every video will have the same type of content. And so it's also not going to be like a video contest between the different schools. So everyone will post a similar templated video on February 12th for families to review for schools they're interested in.
So, el primer paso va a ser que cada escuela primaria en el distrito va a publicar un video el 12 de febrero y cada video de cada escuela va a tener más o menos la misma información. Y este es para que cada escuela tenga el mismo proceso, tenga la misma información. Y esto será el 12 de febrero.
And then on February 18th, the district will host a virtual DLI and Focus Option Schools citywide lottery open house that this year will be virtual, and it will have, after they explain the process, there will be breakout rooms so that interested families can meet with different school principals and learn more about individual schools.
El siguiente evento va a tomar lugar el 18 de febrero y este va a ser un evento virtual donde el distrito va a presentar información acerca de los diferentes programas de inmersión y acerca de otros programas especiales en el distrito. Los padres van a poder participar y después de la junta van a haber diferentes cuartos de Zoom o de Google Meets donde cada familia podrá conocer un poquito más sobre la escuela que están interesados y poder platicar con los directores y tener más información acerca de esa escuela.
Now, the next two parts are new for many schools, but it's actually something that you all were doing before I was even here. So great job, you guys. But it's really providing us time to, instead of focusing on the lottery piece, focus on actual Connect to Kinder events to build community. And the district wants every school to do 2 to 3 events between April and May, and then another 1 to 2 events in July and August.
Las siguientes cosas son algo que en SCA ya hemos hecho, pero que en varias escuelas va a ser algo nuevo. El distrito va a querer que dentro de abril a mayo la escuela tenga 2 o 3 eventos de kinder para poder conectar a las familias y aprender sobre el proceso. Y luego de julio a agosto tener otra segunda junta de kinder para poder ayudar a las familias a apuntar a sus hijos.
And then the last little update around kinder is that the lottery window will run from February 18th, so like the day of that initial virtual kickoff meeting for the district, till March 16th, and families will get their results in early May.
Y acerca de la lotería de inmersión, la lotería se va a abrir el 18 de febrero. Es la misma fecha que la junta de distrito donde van a compartir esa información. Y la lotería va a cerrar el 16 de marzo. Los padres que fueron seleccionados sabrán a principios de mayo.
Any questions about kinder?
Algunas preguntas sobre kinder.
Again, I had one. We have a current kinder and we didn't get a chance to do any orientation. She didn't get to do that last year. So I just wondered if you had any opinion about a current kinder going this summer, just kind of trying to get the whole school experience, if that would be a problem at all.
La pregunta del señor es que él tiene un estudiante en kinder y su pregunta fue si es posible que su hijo o hija repita para poder tener esa experiencia de kinder.
Yes, so the district's working right now with us on some extensive strategic planning for kindergarten and first grade. So the EKT program, early kindergarten transition, that's normally offered just to kindergarten, will be offered to kindergarten and first graders. We're also working on one-on-one connections visits for kindergarten and first graders next year, and potentially additional supports within the first grade classrooms, and what we can do to make sure that our kindergartners from this year are really supported. In first grade, the PPS policy is, I'll let Jose translate that before I take another breath because he's probably going to kill me. So go ahead, Jose.
La respuesta inicial de la directora fue que el distrito ahorita está en el proceso de planificando cómo se va a ver el kinder y el primer grado el próximo año escolar. Y ahorita los planes iniciales son que antes tenemos el programa de Early Kinder Transition Program, en inglés se llama, conocido por las letras EKT, que es un programa para introducir a los estudiantes de kinder a la escuela. El distrito está planeando en tener ese programa y abrirlo a todos los estudiantes de kinder y todos de primer grado para que ellos puedan tener ese momento de conocer a la maestra, conocer cómo va a ser la escuela antes de que lleguen los demás estudiantes.
The second part of that answer is that it is PPS policy that parents of, which I guess this would be a little bit different, but if you had a kindergarten age student and did not actually do kindergarten at all this year, you could decide if you wanted your student to start in kindergarten or in first grade. And I know the district's coming out with some more kind of guidance around that. I know at Scott, we're definitely pushing for students to be in their correct grade. There's a lot of research that shows that retention is not effective. And so, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of decisions that you're going to make as a parent for your kid. And I think we're just letting you know that we are strategically planning for first grade, supports for first grade to get those kids what they need and to get them caught up. Because I would just encourage you to do the research on retention and its effectiveness before making a decision for your child. And then if you're currently enrolled in a grade, any grade, you will not be allowed to retain your child. That's not something that the district promotes or supports for the most part, but there is more guidance coming out about that as well.
La segunda parte de la respuesta, y va a haber más información publicada del distrito más tarde, es que es la póliza o la norma del distrito de que cada estudiante esté en su grado actual. Sabemos que hay muchos padres que quieren que su hijo repita el año en el que está ahorita otra vez. Y lo que la directora dijo es que nosotros como la escuela estamos planificando demasiado para asegurar que cada grado tenga los apoyos que ocupan para poder apoyar a los estudiantes, vengan como vengan. Pero que sí va a haber más información acerca de esto, pero que en la opinión de ella no es una buena idea que un estudiante repita un grado.
Any other questions around kinder?
¿Alguna otra pregunta acerca de kinder?
Okay, on to map testing, everyone's favorite topic, I'm sure.
So vamos a pasar ahorita a los exámenes de MAP.
So the district is planning to do map testing, but only for 3rd through 5th grade students this spring. So it will actually be happening in February and then also in the spring, and we will have more information coming soon. We want you to know that we will be using this data to help with re-entry planning, and it will only be for planning purposes. So student scores are not used for grades, they are not used for promotion. They would never be used to in any way against a student. It really is just to help us seeing where kids are, because we really don't have that much data on the students, so that we can better plan for students returning to school.
So el distrito ha decidido que los estudiantes que están en grados 3 a 5 van a tomar el examen de MAP. Es un examen virtual y lo van a tomar en matemáticas y lectura. Eso es algo que el distrito ha decidido. Sabemos que quizás mucha gente se siente un poco incómoda con tener que hacer un examen virtual, a pesar de todo lo que los estudiantes están enfrentando, pero queremos que sepan que de nuestra perspectiva como escuela no vamos a tomar los resultados de una manera negativa. No va a ser parte de las calificaciones, es simplemente una manera de ver dónde están los estudiantes en este momento.
And we're working right now with our grade level teams to create kind of the testing schedule for that. And our goal is to disrupt the schedule as minimally as possible. So just use the times we already have students together to take the exam. So there shouldn't be huge changes on your end, but teachers and Jose and I will be in contact when we have a little bit more information about exactly what it will look like.
Y queremos que sepan que estamos trabajando con los grados que van a estar tomando el examen para poder planificar cómo se va a ver el horario. No queremos hacer grandes cambios al horario. Vamos a tomar ventaja de los tiempos que los estudiantes están presentando y poder hacer el examen en esos tiempos.
Any questions about map testing?
Preguntas acerca del examen de MAP.
Okay, one last quick update before we get to what I'm sure you're all sitting on here waiting for, which I've been conveniently waiting to talk about last. Is we're going to talk about Successful School Survey first very quickly, which is a survey that we give to staff, students, and families every year to get feedback and improve.
So ahorita vamos a hablar sobre la encuesta de escuelas exitosas. En inglés se conoce como el Successful School Surveys. Y después de esto hablaremos un poco más sobre los diferentes planes acerca de cómo se va a ver el regreso a la escuela, y igual el próximo semestre académico.
So the survey window for students is mid to late February, and teachers will lead students through the survey. It's only for 3rd through 5th grade students. And so we're going to kind of link it on with map testing and just knock that out all at once to get student feedback at that time.
So el distrito ha requerido que la encuesta se le ofrezca al personal, a los estudiantes de grados 3º a 5º y también a las familias. Estamos planeando en que los estudiantes van a tomar la encuesta en febrero, y queremos tomar ventaja del tiempo que van a estar dedicando para tomar el examen de MAP y también tomar esta encuesta en ese tiempo.
And just like last year, there'll be a family survey as well. It's going to take place in March, and it's primarily done online. You'll get lots of friendly remind messages and robocalls from us asking you to take the survey. Assistant Principal Salinas has also requested paper copies in English, Spanish, Somali, and Vietnamese for any of our families who prefer paper or feel more comfortable taking the survey in paper form. And those we'll make sure we'll make those available for how to get them and how to turn them back in if that is of interest to any family.
So la encuesta también es para las familias, y las familias tomarán la encuesta en marzo. La encuesta también es virtual, pero yo sé que hay varias familias que a lo mejor les gustaría tener una copia de papel. So yo ya metí un pedido para que nos manden algunas copias imprimidas en los idiomas de inglés, español, somali y de vietnamés, para que las familias que están interesadas en tomar la encuesta en papel puedan hacerlo.
Any questions about the Successful School Survey?
Algunas preguntas sobre la encuesta de escuelas exitosas.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're going to talk now about Q3, school reentry, and limited in-person instruction.
So ahorita vamos a hablar sobre el próximo semestre, igual sobre un programa que en inglés se conoce por Limited In-Person Instruction, y en español se traduce a la enseñanza limitada en persona.
And before we dig into start, I just want to call out that there's 2 major sides to this issue, and I want us to make sure that we're thinking of both of those as we hear the plan and kind of talk about as much information as I have, because I don't have all the information quite yet. And I want us to remember that everyone wants what's best for kids, even if we all have different views on what that looks like.
Antes de que empecemos con todos los detalles que sabemos, queremos enfocarnos en que sabemos que hay varias perspectivas acerca del regreso a la escuela. Sabemos que muchos padres están preocupados sobre la salud mental, sobre la falta de aprendizaje que están viendo, y también hay padres que están preocupados acerca de cómo vamos a mantener a sus hijos seguros, cómo vamos a asegurarnos de limitar cualquier riesgo a la salud.
Yeah, and so when I say that these 2 major sides, there's mental health concerns and people who we want kids are missing learning, and we're worried about kids being out of school, but we also want to acknowledge that there's also families and communities that are very concerned about safety and health. as well when we were talking about returning to school. And that it's really important to remember that we all come to this with our own identities and biases, right? So I come into this conversation as a white woman, and I have to remember that my identity impacts how I approach planning for this and thinking through the problems of students returning to school, that my identity and my privilege impacts that and how I come to this conversation.
So queremos compartir también que cada uno de nosotros tiene nuestra opinión acerca del regreso a escuela, y nosotros como administradores también tenemos nuestras propias identidades, nuestras propias tendencias o parcialidades acerca de este tema, pero queremos dejarles saber que estamos entrando a esta situación con la mejor intención de apoyar a nuestros estudiantes.
And, you know, I also come to this conversation as someone who lives by myself. I don't live with my older parents. I don't live with my pregnant sister-in-law. And again, that impacts how I come to this conversation. And I want us to just remember that Scott serves primarily students of color, the majority of our student body. And we also have a staff that is pretty much 50% staff members of color as well, as we think about our reentry conversations.
La directora también compartió que ella, en planificando este proceso, ella reconoce que como está soltera, como vive sola, no comparte habitación con sus padres o con su cuñada que está embarazada, que esta situación de su vivienda de ella afecta cómo ha podido trabajar en estos tiempos de la pandemia. Y también quiere reconocer que tenemos una escuela donde la mayoría de los estudiantes son de color, y también tenemos los maestros y trabajadores de la escuela, la mitad son de color.
And we know that our communities of color are affected differently and are more by the virus than our white communities. So I just want us, again, to remember that as we enter this conversation.
Y también quiero recordarles que sabemos que, basado en la información publicada, la pandemia ha afectado a las comunidades de color más que a otras.
So I have more information on limited in-person instruction that I'm going to update you on in just a moment. But I do want to be transparent that the district has not yet, as you would have gotten an email, as would have I, made a larger decision past limited in-person instruction for Q3. So I'm operating under Q3 as of right now, because I have not heard, is comprehensive distance learning until they say something different, with the addition of limited in-person instruction as the new piece that we're adding in right now.
So queremos aclarar que ahorita el distrito solamente no ha comunicado ningún cambio con el aprendizaje virtual. So estamos entrando al próximo semestre con la expectativa de que vamos a continuar el aprendizaje virtual. Lo que el distrito sí ha permitido es este programa de enseñanza limitada, donde es una cantidad de estudiantes pequeños y no está abierta toda la escuela.
So currently, limited in-person instruction, which the district is calling LIPI, planning is taking place with principals and central office staff, and schools are slated to begin as early as Monday, but most schools will be beginning sometime in February with their limited in-person instruction after their plans have been approved.
Queremos dejarles saber que ahorita este programa de enseñanza limitada, en inglés se conoce como LIPI, que ahorita el distrito está en proceso de planificar con los directores para poder empezar en algún momento en febrero.
Our current LIPI plan that Jose and I have been starting to work on, we've been really trying to, again, consider both of those sides of this issue as we've gone into planning. We want to get some kids back into the building for in-person instruction. And without vaccines yet, we also know that we have to start our rollout of that slowly and very carefully to make sure that we're keeping our students and our families and our staff safe and healthy.
So, queremos dejarles saber que en la escuela, la directora y yo ya hemos empezado a planear un poco cómo se va a mirar esta enseñanza limitada. Nos gustaría queremos que regresen algunos estudiantes, pero tenemos que reconocer que sin la vacuna tenemos que empezar un poco lento y con mucho cuidado.
Lippy will start very small. So at Scott, most likely, nothing is finalized yet. As I said, our plan's still in the work and hasn't been approved, but will most likely be one group of 10 students with 1 or 2 staff members for our starting cohort of Lippy students. And then we'll work to build this out. Lippy will be by invitation only to families who meet a set criteria, which will include students with IEPs. If you meet the criteria and you have an IEP, you'll get invited just like anyone else who met the criteria and did not. You should not reach out to request participation in Lippy. You will be contacted with an individual phone call to get information about the program if your child meets the criteria.
El programa de LIPI, o sea, la enseñanza limitada, va a empezar súper pequeña y va a ser solamente enfocada en SCA. Así que, aunque no está fijo, imaginamos que tendremos un grupo de 10 estudiantes que serán dirigidos por un maestro o un trabajador de la escuela. Este programa va a ser solamente por invitación, basados en diferentes requisitos. El programa también va a incluir a los estudiantes que tienen planes de educación especial. Y como familias, ahorita les pedimos que no soliciten participar en el programa del LIPI.
So Lippy grades, so for those 10 spots, the grades will be dependent on what staff volunteers to work Lippy and their skill set and their knowledge, because right now, other than Jose and I, everyone who will be working Lippy is on a voluntary basis.
Algo importante que tienen que saber es el programa de LIPI, de la enseñanza limitada, es basado en maestros o personal que han sido voluntarios, que han por su propia palabra decidido trabajar en esto, y vamos a modelar el programa a través de, digamos, los fondos de aprendizaje o la experiencia de esa persona. Así que todo depende de quién de nuestra escuela quiere ser voluntario para enseñar el grupo.
We're planning to provide both intervention and enrichment opportunities. We want it to be engaging and exciting for the families and students who sign up, and it's something that they want to come and do and that kids really enjoy. And once our plan is approved, which should be happening soon, like I said, that's something we've been drafting and is due basically at the end of this week to get approved. We'll get more information out to families about exactly what it will look like.
Vamos a querer que este programa sea basado en intervenciones académicas, pero también oportunidades de enriquecimiento. Queremos intentar diferentes cosas. Queremos que la enseñanza sea algo divertido e interesante para los estudiantes. Pero ahorita estamos en el proceso de planificar, y ya cuando tengamos los planes finalizados y aprobados por el distrito, esperemos que esto va a suceder pronto. Les vamos a poder compartir más información acerca de cada elemento de este programa.
And there's a question I see in the chat box, which is, what if your student's teacher volunteers? Would you get another teacher or another school staff? So we do know the answer to that. So Lippy is in addition to what teachers are already expected to do. So if your teacher does volunteer for Lippy, they would still be teaching their regular live lesson schedule. So it won't affect, like, your teacher couldn't get pulled away from your current students. teachers will get paid for the planning and then additional LIPI time, and we will work the LIPI schedule around the volunteer teacher schedule. So the time and days also is dependent on which teachers volunteer, so that we can make sure that they're still able to teach their live lessons in addition to teaching LIPI.
So, una pregunta que alguien publicó es, ¿qué pasa si la maestra de un estudiante decide participar en el programa del IPI, del aprendizaje limitado? ¿Quiere decir que el estudiante recibirá una maestra nueva? O que si van a haber otros cambios en la escuela debido a esta participación? Y la respuesta es no. So, el programa del LIPI es algo adicional a lo que está pasando al momento. Así que si la maestra de su hijo decide participar en este programa, ella todavía va a seguir con su horario normal. El programa del LIPI tomaría lugar en otro tiempo, cuando ella no está con los grupos ya que están en el plan. Así que es algo diferente y no va a afectar el tiempo que sus estudiantes están pasando con la maestra.
The longest, in addition, per the state, the longest amount of time students can come to the building during limited in-person instruction is for 2 hours per day. So if a teacher's doing it, we're working 2 additional hours into their schedules. And same for students, we would also make sure that the students' LIPI schedule doesn't impact their Tier 1 whole class instruction, that they're still getting through comprehensive distance learning. This would be additional outside of their live lessons, small group intervention and enrichment in person at the school.
También queremos dejarles saber que por requisitos del Estado, si su hijo participa en el programa del LIPI, solamente sería algo de 2 horas. Eso serían máximo 2 horas al día en el edificio, y estos son normas del Estado. También queremos dejarles saber que si su hijo participa en el programa del IPI, ellos aún van a estar participando en las sesiones virtuales con su maestro. Las 2 horas del IPI sería algo apartado y no afectaría las materias principales.
Any other questions about limited in-person instruction? I'll answer as best I can. I'm trying to give you all the information I currently have.
I have a question.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Let me sneak in really quick. La directora dijo que si hay algunas otras preguntas acerca de este programa del IPI, del aprendizaje limitado en persona.
Are we talking about just Q3 or just at the very beginning? I'm not sure about the time frame, and maybe you don't know.
I don't know. That's the problem. The district hasn't come out yet with you know how they're doing like the quarter by quarter decision. Like they've announced that there's limited in-person instruction. They haven't announced that like all of Q3 will be comprehensive distance learning with limited in-person. Like I know that's what we're going to be starting with. I mean, I know from the meetings I've been at the district about limited in-person instruction that they do want to get students and staff back to buildings as soon as they possibly can. And I think a lot of that does weigh on vaccines, which someone put in the chat. And so educators are phase 1B, which is the next phase. It just depends on when that phase starts. And then you have to remember it's a 5 to 6 week process once you start getting the vaccinations to be protected enough to, for us to really come back.
So, la pregunta de la señora fue, ¿sabemos las fechas acerca de cuándo empezaría este programa? Y la respuesta es no. El distrito solamente nos ha dicho que podemos empezar a planificar cómo se miraría este programa de enseñanza limitada, pero lo único que han comunicado es que en ese semestre que viene aún vamos a continuar con el aprendizaje virtual, y cuando nosotros nos enteremos cuándo podemos empezar, les dejaremos saber.
I had a question too about this limited in-person. Is it school by school? Is it fair to compare Scott to other schools and say, hey, they're doing this over there? Or is everybody in Portland Public making very different decisions around this?
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jose, my bad.
La pregunta del señor es, ¿quiere saber qué tanto en común van a tener los diferentes programas de enseñanza limitada en cada escuela? O sea, que se puede comparar lo que va a hacer SCA con lo que va a hacer otra escuela, o si cada escuela va a tener un plan diferente.
So there's certain pieces and requirements through the state that are the same. However, each school does have to differentiate and make a little bit of their own plan because you have to be able to staff it, right? So you have to have people that are going to volunteer to work it. You have to think about your community and what your community wants and what you can do safely with the facilities and the resources that you have. So most elementary schools that are, oh, sorry, Jose, I'll let you translate that and then I'll continue.
So la respuesta inicial de la directora es que sí y no a la respuesta de si cada escuela va a ser igual o diferente. Hay requisitos del estado, así que hay algunas cosas que van a ser iguales, pero como cada escuela tiene que recaudar los maestros que van a enseñar, la escuela va a construir el programa basado en quién va a enseñar. Así que cada escuela tendrá algo diferente basado en el maestro que va a trabajar y las necesidades de los estudiantes.
We've also been the schools who have been designated to roll out first, which Scott is one of the 16 schools that's going first with Lippy instruction. The CSI schools, we've all been working very closely together. And so everyone is starting really small. The numbers may vary a little bit from school to school, but we've been encouraged to start small, to get it right, to do it well, and then to build out. So as things are going well, if we have more teachers who volunteer to teach, if we can get more subs to come in to even, to teach as well, we're able to then open more sections. But it is important that first we bring people back safely and make sure that all of the protocols and that everything we're doing is on point first. And so we have been encouraged to start small and then to build out once we have done a smaller group or two safely.
So nosotros como directores hemos estado trabajando con otras escuelas en el distrito para poder colaborar y trabajar juntos en planificar todo esto. So la meta que tenemos es vamos a empezar pequeño y basado en cómo salen las cosas. Si es que tenemos éxito, podemos seguir expandiendo el programa, pero todo va a depender de cómo va esta primera ronda.
I have a question. I have two questions. Maybe you already mentioned this, and so I'm sorry if I missed it. Is there any funding for this? And how will you know it is successful?
Those are great questions.
La pregunta de la señora fue, la primera pregunta es, ¿hay fondos dedicados a este programa? Y la segunda pregunta es, ¿cómo vamos a saber si este programa fue exitoso?
So in terms of funding, the funding's at the central office, like the district level. So we're being provided, PPE and those types of resources, as well as how teachers and staff who are working will be paid is all centrally. So it's not coming from the Scott specific budget, that's coming from the central office. Then I'll answer the second part after Jose does that part.
So, acerca de los fondos, el distrito sí nos está proveyendo con diferentes recursos para poder implementar este programa. Por ejemplo, nos van a proveer las diferentes cosas que ocupamos para mantener a los estudiantes seguros, como mascarillas, desinfectante, cosas así. So, sí tenemos recursos que nos están proveyendo para esto.
And I think success will, at least as I can answer from like Jose and my perspective of how we're going to measure how we think the program is successful. I think there's a couple of things, right? There's a safety component and then there's an instruction component, right? So are we able to make sure that all of the protocols are followed, that social distancing is followed and implemented effectively, that we're following all the CDC guidelines and the standard operating procedures to keep kids and staff safe is one piece of it. And then I think the second piece of it is looking at, depending on what program we come up with when we finalize our plan, like whether that's around reading or whether that's around math and whatever grade level is looking at, what are the interventions and instruction being used, just like in the regular school day, right? And like, are students showing growth? How are we seeing what students are learning? How are we responding when students either aren't learning it or are getting it, and measuring that growth, which we're actually pretty good at when we're in the building, more so I would even say than when we're in comprehensive distance learning. So I think it's an exciting opportunity to be able to measure and to see that for some of our students and then build the program out as we're able to.
Y la respuesta a la segunda pregunta de cómo sabremos si el programa fue exitoso, hay diferentes maneras de poder evaluar esto. La primera cosa que compartió la directora fue acerca de salud y cómo ser precavidos en esta pandemia. So, sabremos si fue exitoso, si sabemos que no hubo, digamos, infecciones o si se pudieron mantener todos sanos y en buena salud. Y también tenemos que pensar en forma académica. Todo depende de cómo se mira el programa, de qué se va a enseñar, pero de ahí vamos a poder evaluar si se enseñó lo que originalmente quisimos o si no, y también evaluar, así como haríamos en el edificio, qué aprendieron, cómo lo aprendieron, cómo podemos mejorar. So, hay diferentes maneras de evaluar el programa, pero todo depende de cómo se va a mirar al final.
I have a couple questions. First of all, in terms of these cohorts, would it be like, for example, I have a son in kindergarten, would it be like 2 cohorts of 10 that would cycle through so more kids would have a chance to be in person? Or would it start off as just this one group? And then 2, you said it'd be invitation only, and I was wondering if you could give kind of some of the parameters that will be used for that.
Yes, so all of that is in our plan. Oh, shoot, sorry.
So, la pregunta de la señora tuvo 2 preguntas. La primera es acerca de los grupos. Si solamente, digamos, si una familia tiene varios estudiantes, ¿van a poder participar ambos o van a tomar turnos los diferentes grupos? O sea, ¿cómo se va a mirar, pues, este programa en términos de quién participa y cómo se abrirá las puertas a otros estudiantes? Y la segunda pregunta fue acerca de si este programa va a ser por invitación, cuáles son los requisitos o qué van a estar buscando para poder identificar esos estudiantes.
So in terms of the cohorts, we're starting with 1 cohort for the entire school. So we'll be serving potentially 10 students for the entire school to start. That's not per grade, that's not per class, it's for the entire school. We're gonna start there. Things are changing very rapidly. So I'm not going to say, oh, then we're gonna cycle these ones, those ones, because I don't know how things are going to change. But I do know that it will be lippy, and then eventually at some point it will be hybrid. And so if hybrid comes sooner, that may be the next step. If it does not come sooner, then we would think about, like, after some set number of weeks, thinking about, do we expand to a second cohort and a third cohort, and now there's 20 kids that come into that session. So there'll be some expansion, but we're starting small, and we're gonna work on this set of kids with this set amount of time first and see how that goes. And then we're gonna use, then we'll move on as we get more information. In terms of the criteria, I'm not going to share that right now, only because our plan hasn't been approved. So once our plan has been approved, and we've worked with our staff to kind of finalize that plan, and the staff that volunteers. So like I said, we're building the plan around the staff that volunteers. Then we'll release criteria, but basically the criteria could be around, like, your attendance, or if you're a certain number of grade levels behind in reading or in math, or different things like that. It'll be a set criteria that then we can run all of the kids through, and anyone who meets that criteria would then get invited to sign up for the program if they were interested. If too many families are interested, then we'll have to go to like a lottery with the families who met the criteria.
All right, let's see if I remember it all. So lo que dijo la directora fue con la pregunta inicial de cómo van a funcionar los grupos. En SCA vamos a empezar solamente con un grupo de 10 estudiantes. Así que de toda la escuela, solamente 10 estudiantes en un grupo. Y todo esto va a ser basado también en quién va a enseñar ese grupo. Ahorita no sabemos cómo se va a expandir ese programa. Cada semana hay como nuevas noticias, el Estado publica diferentes requisitos. Ahorita hay muchísimo cambio y no podemos decir claramente cómo se van a ver las cosas en las próximas semanas, pero sí vamos a empezar con un grupo de 10 estudiantes. La segunda pregunta fue cómo sabremos los requisitos o qué van a estar buscando para identificar a los estudiantes. Y ahorita la directora no puede compartir esa información simplemente porque el plan de nuestra escuela no ha sido aprobado. Cuando el distrito apruebe el plan, ya podemos comunicar todos esos detalles. Pero todo va a depender de esa aprobación y también si es que hay más de 10 familias que califican para el programa y no tenemos, o sea, el límite son 10, tendremos que tener un programa de lotería o una manera para poder escoger estudiantes al azar y no dar preferencia.
So it sounds like to me that most students will continue with distance learning through after spring break, possibly a hybrid. Do you think that it would be worth advocating for, I had wrote in the questions, just like a structured summer program? Is that something that you said was in the works, but something that we should encourage, or wait and see how this all goes?
La pregunta de la señora fue que se parece que esas son sus palabras de ellas, no las mías. Ella dijo que parece que actualmente cada estudiante, la mayoría de los estudiantes van a continuar con un aprendizaje virtual, por lo menos hasta las vacaciones de la primavera, y quizás ya después de esas vacaciones habrán más anuncios acerca de cómo se van a ver los programas educativos. Y también, esa fue su opinión de ella. Y también preguntó que como padres, ¿qué pueden hacer ustedes para abogar por un programa de verano o otro programa para poder apoyar a los estudiantes? ¿O cómo pueden hacer los padres algo para propugnar que haya una opción para todos los estudiantes?
Yes, so I think the information that I have in terms of like the immediate future is, yes, the majority of students will be in comprehensive distance learning, and we'll be starting very limited in-person instruction. I don't have a date for how long that will go in any way. I don't know if it's spring break. I don't know if it's after. What I know is the stages from the state are first limited in person, then hybrid, then full reentry, from what I understand right now. And I don't know currently what the district's plans are for that. I do know from serving on some planning teams at the district level that there's lots and lots and lots of talks and a commitment to summer programming, both this summer and the following summer that they're looking at. So at least 2 summers worth of summer programming. Now, the details of like what that looks like, I don't have, but I know there's a strong commitment to learning recovery, both through the summer and I think also with additional resources and planning and support during the school year as well, because just 2 summers won't probably do the learning recovery we need. It will be a big help, but we'll also need to have planned supports for during the school year next year.
So lo que dijo la directora acerca de la pregunta de si van a haber programas de verano o qué pueden hacer los padres para pedir un programa para los estudiantes, es que de lo que sabemos nosotros, el aprendizaje virtual va a continuar hasta que el instituto diga algo al contrario. So, no sabemos, no les podemos dar una fecha de cuándo va a terminar. Y también compartió la directora que el distrito ahorita está teniendo conversaciones para ver si pueden tener un programa de verano este verano, pero también el próximo verano, en el 2022, para que hagan diferentes oportunidades para que los estudiantes participen y puedan recuperar diferentes materias o diferentes cosas que quizás no pudieron aprender debido a todo esto.
Is this a good time for questions?
This is yes, this is the question time.
Ooh, okay. I have a lot of questions and I have a real challenge with organizing my thoughts, so bear with me here. But I know this is really complicated, obviously. I mean, all of us are profoundly affected by COVID, no matter what you're doing. But what I really am hungry for is some leadership in terms of like you said, Megan, it's like we all want what's best for the kids, but what's best for the kids is what's best for the families. And right now, what I'm really missing is some sort of, like, for instance, I mean, just to start off the cuff, like reading frantically like I do, like how to make classrooms safe. I hear about like open windows, room cleaners, like you go to the dentist, dentists are open and you go there and they have room cleaners, or like outdoor schools. And I
believe you're cutting out. I can't hear you.
Memory, I think you got muted.
Facebook. So I'm hoping for some connection where there's some solutions, because right now I really am disappointed to hear, and not on you, this is so complicated and we're all working with this, but I am really excited to figure out a solution other than just like, we don't know, there might be 10 kids that get to go back to school. Like, I don't know, like that's a good start. We've got to start somewhere, but like where and I know PPS is like the Titanic and changing, maybe in not all the ways, but I want to make sure that what we're doing is in this precious time that we have with what is a real hard time, no matter what your connection is to it. As a teacher being asked to volunteer, which I'm really curious about why, anyway, that's another thing. But I just am wondering like what we need to figure out solutions, because right now I think it's safe to say that everyone's having a really hard time. And the longer we stay out of classrooms, it's going to get scarier for teachers as they envision what that could be like. And then we're sitting here like, should we raise money? Should we be talking to, if we can have a person that you could share that is a voice on the board, I don't know. Again, I don't know where to start, but for me, it makes me feel so much more optimistic when I have someone being innovative and creative and we're talking about something huge. But right now, the day-to-day is so grueling that I'm willing to just spend some time on getting crazy and just making this be hopeful rather than really frustrating and disappointing and confusing. And so that's my very long-winded first question.
Voy a tomar lo que dijo la señora y voy a hacer un resumen corto. Básicamente, exige como un tipo de liderazgo o algo para poder abogar por los estudiantes. So, quiere saber cómo podemos mejor apoyar nuestras familias, si es recaudar fondos, si es tener clases al aire abierto, pero gusta ver un tipo de liderazgo para poder salir de esta situación.
So I think I'm going to start with, I just want to call out that you're coming from the perspective that for your family, going back to school and being in person in buildings is the most important thing. And that's not true for all of the families in our community. And so I want to push that, like I said, everyone wants what's best for kids and not everyone agrees on what that is. And we have to keep all of our teachers and all of our families safe. And this is not easy for any of us. And I would push that from an outside perspective. It's easy to say there's lack of leadership or lack of innovation or lack of different things going on. And I would push that. I think I've seen some of the most innovation from teachers, from leaders, trying to figure out how to make this work. And it's hard because am I excited to say, yes, I want kids back in the building? Yeah, I would love to have kids back in the building. Every single one of the teachers at this school would love to have kids back in the building. Our teachers don't love distance learning, we're all trying our best and doing a really, really good job. There's no vaccine yet. And so, I hate for this to turn into like, well, why can't teachers come back? Why can't we open windows? Like just opening windows is not going to keep people safe. And so we're doing the best that we can. And I think we're working really, really, really hard. And I would just say Jose and I have been spending a lot of time planning limited in person. I get it's frustrating that it's 10 kids for an entire school, but that is a step in the right direction. And to do it safely sounds a lot better to me than trying to do something larger and having it not go well or having people not be safe while doing that. So I think there's going to be people that are just not happy with no matter what we do, there's going to be people who aren't happy. And I get that this is really going to be hard because we're in a pandemic and pandemics are really hard. And
Megan, I don't want to make it sound like I was coming down on you. And I realize my choice of words was that you guys have been doing an amazing job. You have been. At the same time, like you're saying, we all want, I think we could also include in we want what's best for families and kids, and we want everyone to be safe. Absolutely. I want to make sure that I'm making myself really clear that I want everyone to feel safe. And I want everyone to have the vaccine, everybody. And so, and here we are, and it's January, and we left school in March, and it's been a really hard year. And I'm so impressed with you guys, but at the same time, here we are, where tomorrow we're going to get back on the computers again. So again, I want everyone to be safe. I'm super excited to hear solutions, but as a person who's looking for a solution, I don't mean just simply opening windows, but I mean looking around at, frankly, every other organization and business that I know that's been open and figuring it out. I'm okay, well, let's use those tools. Let's do this. We have so many guinea pigs. Many other school districts have gone back. Maybe a full day isn't right. I don't want to dominate the discussion. I'll sign myself off, but I respectfully appreciate all you've done. But you're right, pandemics are hard. So everything could be on the table, I think. And this could be an incredible time for us to turn this into an opportunity where school
Memory, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. Blah, blah. All right.
Back up 30 seconds.
Again, you guys, I don't want to dominate the discussion. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I don't think anything comes without risk. And I'm just trying to think of positive solutions to what is a really tough, tricky, complicated problem. And I really appreciate all of your work. You guys are doing an amazing job. And you're right, I represent one white lady with two white little boys who are having a really hard time. So that's all I can say, is that I respect all of what you're doing. Thank you. I'm going to sign off.
So, la respuesta que había dicho la directora fue que le contó a la mamá que la perspectiva de esta mamá fue que abriendo las escuelas y dejando entrar a los estudiantes es algo que le sirve a esa familia, le conviene a ellos, es lo que quieren, pero que esto no refleja a todas las comunidades, todas las diferentes familias que a lo mejor no quieren que sus hijos regresen a la escuela. So ahorita, lamentablemente, no hay respuestas para cada pregunta, pero este primer paso de tener el programa del LIPI, del aprendizaje limitado, es un paso en la corrección, en la dirección correcta. Megan, I see that there was a question in the chat about, is there a way to ensure that families who do volunteer for the first cohort are fully informed about the health risks about COVID? So hay una pregunta en el chat que dice, ¿hay alguna manera de asegurarnos que las familias que sí participen en el programa del IPI estén informados acerca de los riesgos de salud con los estudiantes y con las familias?
Yes, so when we invite families to participate in LIPI, we're going to do personal phone calls to really talk them through what LIPI is, what the risks are, what the protocols will be, and if they are interested or not. And it will be completely voluntary for families as well, just like it is for staff members. So the only people participating in LIPI either way are families or staff who feel comfortable volunteering to participate.
So, con las familias que son invitadas al programa, sí vamos a tener conversaciones directas con cada familia para informarles qué precauciones vamos a tomar en la escuela y también compartir qué es lo que haremos si algo desafortunado llegara a ocurrir. So cada familia sí va a estar informada y estaremos tomando precauciones, cada precaución que podamos para mantener a todos sanos y seguros.
I have a question. I'm curious about other school districts around the country that maybe have done this well, and what have they done? Are we looking at some of those examples?
La pregunta fue si hemos investigado qué han hecho otras escuelas a través del país, qué modelos han usado para regresar a los estudiantes y si podemos replicar algo aquí en Scott.
So I would say there's school districts across country who have done it well and not well. So just because school districts have opened doesn't necessarily mean that it's been done well. I just want to put that out there. And so, in our plan, we're looking at all the CDC guidance, all the guidance from the state, different models that have worked and are working to implement like basically standard operating procedures for how to keep kids and staff safe. And I know the district, from the district side, the district's been working since the summer on what hybrid and reentry will look like. And I know it doesn't feel that way because we're not there yet. But I mean, we have lots of resources on what hybrid does need to look like when we get to a place that we can be there. And so, it's not like, oh, we're going to decide to go to hybrid tomorrow, we're not ready for it. It's there's a lot of different moving pieces to this, and the district is planning, and everyone wants to get back, teachers, district staff, everyone included. I mean, I would much rather be in a building with kids every day than sitting on a computer screen. And so, we're all committed to that, and it looks different everywhere. And with the vaccines, I think the hopeful piece of this is we're actually working towards that. There was a point before winter break where I honestly thought we could be in CDL through June, and like for sure, like no in-person anything. And we're talking about limited in-person instruction now. So I think that is hopeful. I know it's not what everyone wants to hear, but we are working with the guidelines and with the models that work and trying to create something that works here for us.
La pregunta inicial fue que si estamos investigando o aprendiendo de qué han hecho otros distritos a través del país en regresar a los estudiantes al edificio. Y lo que compartió la directora es que aunque quizás no se sienta o no se vea, el distrito sí ha pasado varios meses planificando cómo se miraría un regreso a la escuela, incluso teniendo planes de un programa híbrido o mixto, donde los estudiantes pasarían algunos días en el salón y otros días en frente de la computadora. So, hay esos planes, pero debido a varias razones no se han podido implementar aquí. Pero que también compartió ella que antes de las vacaciones del invierno, la directora pensaba que quizás jamás podríamos regresar antes de junio. Pero ahorita estamos en enero y ya hay pláticas de este programa del IPI, del aprendizaje ilimitado. Entonces, aunque quizás no todas puedan beneficiar de esto, estamos moviéndonos en la dirección de poder regresar al edificio.
I also saw some questions in the chat around facilities and filtration and plastic shields between desks.
Sabemos que hay preguntas acerca de la limpieza de la escuela, cómo desinfectar los diferentes áreas donde van a haber gente, cómo trabajar con el conserje para poder asegurar que la escuela está sana y segura. Y sí hay planes acerca de todo eso.
And so I said in the chat that facilities have been working on all the buildings across PPS since the summer, working on things like ventilation and filtration. We have like lines down the middle of the floors and arrows going the directions that you need to go, and different signage about procedures. We do not yet have the plastic, what do you call them? Like the plastic barrier, the plexiglass. We have it in the main locations, like the office, but we don't have it between desks yet. But that's one thing that we have asked for in our LIPI plan to be put into place as well. And I know there's still more pieces that haven't been finalized yet, but they have been working on all of the buildings.
So sí podemos compartir que el conserje de la escuela ha estado trabajando para poder implementar diferentes cosas en el edificio para asegurarnos de que estemos seguros. Por ejemplo, cada salón le han reducido la cantidad de escritorios para preparar en caso de que regresemos. So, cada salón tiene como un máximo de 12, 13 escritorios. Tenemos cinta en los suelos para poder dividir y hay flechas para poder dirigir a los estudiantes en qué manera debemos de caminar, en qué dirección. Cada salón tiene el desinfectante, tiene toallas para limpiar. Algo que todavía no tenemos, pero quizás sí podremos tener, es como el plástico para dividir o crear como un muro entre diferentes personas. Pero sí hay planes con todo eso de mejorar la ventilación, instalar filtros para poder limpiar el aire. So hay varios pasos que ya han tomado para preparar para el regreso a la escuela.
There's a couple other questions in the chat. As weather gets nicer, how easy, hard is it to organize outdoor classes? There's some suggestions for outdoor classes.
So, alguien preguntó que como vaya mejorando el clima, si van a haber oportunidades para poder tener clases al aire libre.
So it's not something we're considering right now, just because it's pretty cold and wet outside. But if, we continue in limited in-person instruction for a longer period of time, then that's definitely something we consider. With the size of our school, I don't think it would be possible to do like a hybrid or full school outdoor model. We just don't have the space for it. But it's definitely something that would be considered depending on how things move forward in, the next couple of weeks and months.
Ella dijo que ahorita no hemos explorado teniendo clases al aire libre simplemente porque el clima pues hace frío, ha estado lloviendo. Pero es algo que como vayan pasando las semanas, los meses, podemos seguir explorando, especialmente si este programa del LIPI, el aprendizaje limitado, continúa. Pero sí reconocemos que una escuela de nuestro tamaño, con casi 500 estudiantes, no será posible tener toda la escuela participando en clases al aire libre porque simplemente no hay espacio para eso.
Another question is around updating on remaining needs for families affected by the fire.
Otra pregunta es cómo podemos seguir identificando las diferentes necesidades de las familias que fueron afectadas por el incendio.
And I see Mira actually wrote something similar to what I wanted to make sure we said, and I think I forgot to say earlier in the chat, which is a lot of our displaced families don't have their permanent residence yet. And so I know everyone wants to like give right now, but I promise there will be a time and many more needs and a place to do more giving. We've given a bunch of money up front to kind of get them at least initially set. And a lot of them don't have space for what they've been receiving. And that's made it really tough. So I think we have to wait because we also they don't know everything they need yet because they're not in their new home. And so I think, we'll come back to this group and to our community once we know more of those needs, but I also want to make sure we're respectful of them saying like, actually, we can't take much more right now in terms of items, and we will keep working on the money, which I think Chani just put in there. So I was thinking items, and then in terms of money, you can go through Mira, you can donate to the fund for PPS, you can donate to Hacienda to continue contributing in that way. But in terms of actual items, we're going to hold off for right now until families come to us and tell us they're ready and what they need, and then we can support again with that.
Yeah, I can echo what Megan was saying. We had a family come by today to look at some of the donations that we have had in the building, and they were more than grateful for everything they saw, but they're currently rooming with family members, and they simply told me like, we don't have a space. So they took like the small items that they could benefit from, but they asked us to hold on to a few things until they have their own housing, which could be a while. So la pregunta acerca de cómo podemos seguir apoyando a las familias que fueron desplazadas. Actualmente ellos están viviendo con diferentes familiares, con amigos, o están en viviendas donde no hay mucho espacio. Así que ahorita, aunque tengan necesidades ellos, nos han pedido que no mandemos más materiales porque no tienen el espacio para guardar todo. Pero ya cuando tengan su propia vivienda, algo permanente, es cuando van a necesitar un poquito más de ayuda para poder tener todas las cositas que uno requiere en la casa. Algo que me gustaría hacer ahorita es que si algunas de las familias hispanohablantes tienen preguntas, queremos asegurarnos que también ustedes tengan un chance de decirnos qué piensan o qué preguntas tienen. So I just took a moment to ask our Spanish-speaking families if anyone had any questions. Any other questions from the wider group? Wider, as in wide, not white.
No, I just want to make a comment, and just maybe other people can relate to the concern around the social emotional is greater for me than the academic. And kids can catch up academically, but it's the social emotional part that is the most difficult.
Compartió la mamá que ella está preocupada con el desarrollo socioemocional de sus hijos, más que preocupaciones académicas. Siente que lo académico se puede aprender más tarde, pero el desarrollo socioemocional es algo que depende pues de la edad del niño. Es algo hay una etapa de desarrollo que es muy importante.
I mean, I think that's a concern that I'm sure lots of families have, and I know we have as a school as well. It's why we want to get back as soon as we can. And we do have a dedicated 30 minutes a day SEL block, but it's not the same, or social emotional learning block, but it's not the same on a screen as it is in person. And so we don't have all the answers for that. But we are, like I said, we are concerned, and we are trying to get students back and families back as soon as we can.
Contestó la directora que esa es una preocupación que nosotros tenemos como trabajadores en educación, y sabemos que muchas familias también están preocupados sobre ese desarrollo socioemocional. Como escuela decidimos apartar 30 minutos cada día para hablar sobre esos temas, pero sabemos que no es igual hacerlo en persona. Pero nuestra esperanza es que poco a poco vamos a poder regresar al edificio, y hasta entonces haremos lo mejor que podamos.
I would just point out that Mira also put into the chat the information for our school social worker who started this fall. Her name's Rosie, and I know not everyone has met her yet, but she is very incredible. And she put her contact information in the chat if there's any families that want to reach out to her directly.
So, en el chat, la señora Mira compartió la información sobre nuestra trabajadora social. Ella se llama Rosy Sánchez Márquez. Ella empezó en nuestra escuela este otoño, y es un buen recurso para las familias en poder navegar diferentes recursos o ayudas que las familias ocupan. Su información está en el chat, número de teléfono y también su correo electrónico. Y es bilingüe. Any other questions? ¿Algunas otras preguntas?
Dakota, got a hand up? No.
You're muted.
There we go. Thank you. So I'm not used to this. My first grader is great at this. I'm wondering if you know if there's any sort of lobbying on behalf of the district to help with the sequencing of the vaccine rollout. I'm thrilled that the educators are getting it. My husband is a type 1 diabetic and otherwise immune compromised. And I know in the Scott community, we have a lot of kids in multi-generational households. And I know this is going forward a couple steps of people returning back to school, but I know I can't send my daughter back to in-person learning unless your dad's vaccinated. And I know a lot of families must be struggling with this if if they're living in, with other immune compromised family members or in a multi-generational household. I've had my own, email writing campaign going, but I'm just, one mom from the Northeast. I didn't know if there's some way the district was working to try to get the families of young students moved up in the sequencing.
La pregunta de la señora es que si el distrito ha estado abogando al estado para que puedan incluir a las familias que tienen niños de edades de la escuela primaria, que si el distrito ha estado abogando para que esas familias también puedan recibir la vacuna antes que otros grupos, porque ella siente que como tiene un pariente en casa que es tiene la salud frágil, quizás no se siente cómoda mandando a su estudiante a la escuela debido a ese riesgo.
So I don't totally know. I know there's a district vaccination team that is working on vaccination planning and advocacy and prioritization. I'm not on that team, so I don't know exactly what they are advocating for. But I know that I hear you. Those are the same concerns of many of our teachers and many of our families is, even once teachers are vaccinated, or even once I'm vaccinated, if we're back in school, using myself as an example, like I'm not going to be able to see my parents. Luckily, I don't live with them, right? So I can make that happen. But if you're in a multi-generational house, even if someone is vaccinated, we're not sure yet if that means they can't transmit it. So it's really hard. There's a lot of moving pieces, but I do know that there's a team, and I know they're working on things, and I know they're trying to get PPS sites for vaccinations, and they're working with the state and MESD and working on the things. I just don't know exactly what they're talking about.
Compartió ya que el distrito sí tiene un equipo dedicado a apoyar con las vacunas, pero no está tan segura qué trabajo han hecho para abogar que las familias también reciban las vacunas. Pero esa preocupación es común, es algo que muchas familias temen, y también hay maestros que se preocupan de eso. Si uno como maestro recibe la vacuna, aún no sabemos si aún se puede transmitir la enfermedad a otros familiares o otra gente con quien convivan, si se puede transmitir. Así que es una preocupación que afecta a toda la comunidad, pero no tenemos una respuesta al momento.
I just want to address an important question I saw in the chat. That was, will we be forced to make our kids go back this year?
Hay una pregunta que fue escrita en el chat y es que si van a ser forzados que sus estudiantes regresen este año.
That you definitely will not be forced to have your students go back this year. I know the district committed to, at the beginning of the year, allowing any families who wanted to stay online full year be able to do that. And in the conversations we've been having around LIPI and some of the things I've heard about the hybrid planning, there will be an online school for families who want to keep their kids online or need to keep their kids home for the safety of their family. So that definitely will be in place. I don't want anyone to worry that you will be forced to send your kids back if that's not safe for your family to do.
So podemos confirmar que nadie va a ser forzado a regresar a la escuela. El distrito se ha comprometido a dar opciones virtuales para las familias que no se sienten cómodas o seguras regresando a los edificios. Así que mientras estemos implementando esos programas de aprendizajes limitados, o si llegáramos a llegar a un periodo donde hay un programa híbrido o mixto, las familias aún tendrán la opción de tener un programa 100% virtual.
Any other questions?
I have one. So I don't even think that this will come into play, but if we fourth quarter go into a hybrid model, the kids who choose to stay doing, you know, full online schooling, will they transition to a different teacher, a different classroom, like a different program? And then all the kids who choose to go with the hybrid, you know, stay with their teacher in their class?
La pregunta de la señora fue que si en el último semestre del año escolar, si fuéramos a regresar al edificio en un programa mixto, que si su hijo sería afectado y tendría que tener una maestra diferente o tendría que cambiar de horario. Y ese último semestre empezaría en abril.
That's a great question. And I'm not going to attempt to answer it yet because I don't think I have enough information and I don't want to say something that doesn't end up being accurate. But I know we'll try and keep as much at the Scott level. I know Jose and I are committed to keeping as much consistency for kids as we can, while also making a program that works for families and teachers and everyone. So I think there's still some thinking that needs to go into that. And I'm not on the hybrid planning team for the district. So I'm not sure exactly what the model is, but I do know that if you want to stay online, that will be provided for sure. I do know that.
So dijo la directora que esa fue una buena pregunta que no tiene buena respuesta. Al momento no sabemos mucho sobre esos planes y no sería bueno dar una respuesta sin saber esos detalles. Pero sí, como acabamos de decir, podemos confirmar que las familias que quieren algo 100% virtual tendrán esa opción.
Another good question in the chat. Are you hearing of any particular things teachers need help with right now that parents can help support if they are able?
So, hay una pregunta en el chat que dice que si sabemos acerca de unas cosas que los maestros ocupan, con cuáles los padres pueden ayudar a proveerlos.
There's not something right off the top of my head that comes to mind, but I will definitely check with the team and find out if there's things that teachers feel like parents can help with, and then we can get that back out to you guys.
Ahorita no estamos seguros, pero sí les podemos preguntar a los maestros que podemos hacerles esta pregunta y poder compartir con ustedes lo que nos cuentan ellos. Something that does come to mind that we will be, it was in the newsletter last week, was the first week of February, we're going to be doing a school supply replenishment. We know that a lot of families are in need of new school supplies or didn't receive some in the fall. And so a big kind of like school-wide ask is, as we start seeing which families haven't been able to pick them up, just asking for assistance from our parents to help us deliver some of that stuff, because it's going to be a huge undertaking to reach the whole school. Algo que les compartí es que la primera semana de febrero vamos a empezar a repartir otra ronda de útiles escolares y tenemos un paquete para cada estudiante, así que algo que nos pueden ayudar ustedes como padres es ayudar a repartir los útiles con sus vecinos, amigos que conozcan. This is the work that some awesome volunteers did last week. So there are all 470-ish supply kits that we are hoping to roll out in February. There's also a lot of math manipulatives as well as art supplies. So there's a lot of stuff going out, and this is why once we get, and we're doing things, we can definitely communicate which families we're going to need help with. But just to give you an idea of the scale that we're talking about. So les comparto esta imagen solamente para que miren que gracias a muchos voluntarios que pudieron venir a preparar los útiles, tenemos algo para cada estudiante, casi 500 bolsas de útiles, para que tengan una idea de lo grande que va a ser este proyecto. Y aunque no está, lo que no está en la imagen también tenemos paquetes de útiles para matemáticas, igual como útiles para las clases de arte. Así que pueden ver que vamos a ocupar ayuda con esto, pero les dejaremos saber cómo nos pueden ayudar cuando llegue la fecha.
Any last questions?
Is there a way for parents to have their names removed from the list of potential families who will be doing in-person learning to expedite getting the families who do want to get back into the classroom this year?
La pregunta fue que si hay alguna manera que familias que no están interesadas en regresar al edificio, que si hay una lista donde se pueden apuntar para que nosotros sepamos a quién no contactar en caso de que regresemos al edificio.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea. I think for the first round, because we have such few students, it's actually easier for us to just call the people, the smaller group that qualifies and ask. But I think as we expand or get bigger, if we're able to open more sections, then it could make sense. So I'll definitely take that. Jose and I will take that back in our planning and think about if that would be a way to help streamline things. So thanks for the suggestion.
Compartir la directora que eso no fue algo que hemos pensado, no sabíamos que había interés en eso, pero sí podemos, mientras estamos planificando todos esos diferentes programas, pensar en cómo crear una lista donde podemos apuntar a las familias que no están interesadas en regresar, por lo menos en este año escolar.
There is a risk management department. Someone asked in the chat about risk management. So there's a risk management department that you can find on the PPS website.
So, una pregunta que si hay un departamento dedicado a los riesgos y cómo minimizarlos, y si tenemos un departamento en el distrito dedicado a esos riesgos, esa información se puede encontrar en el sitio de PPS.
And I promise we had some really fun games planned for tonight. But we've been on here for an hour and 56 minutes. So I think we might have to save those for another time. They were vetted at our last staff meeting in December and were given rave reviews. So Jose and I were more than willing to bring the games to another night. But I think, speaking for me and Jose, I think we might be a little tired for attempting any games in the last 3 minutes, if you all don't mind.
So les prometemos que sí habíamos planeado jugar algunos juegos con ustedes para poder establecer esa comunidad, pero hemos estado en esta junta por casi un poco más de 2 horas y sentimos que quizás podemos guardar esos juegos para la próxima junta y dejar que todos ustedes disfruten de su noche.
And we do have a fun activity for students and families that is coming up on Wednesday, February the 10th at 6.
So compartió que el 10 de febrero va a haber un evento organizado por el grupo de padres y maestros. So el 10 de febrero van a haber juegos, empieza a las 6.
So April Whipple is helping us to plan and organize a family bingo night. And so we will have that for kids and parents, and some staff are going to make some fun appearances that night. So you can, mark your calendars for family bingo night.
Dijo la señora, así que apunten en su calendario que el 10 de febrero va a ser la noche de bingo, que tienen diferentes cosas planeadas para adultos y estudiantes. incluyendo participación de algunos maestros de la escuela. Así que el 10 de febrero a las 6.
And then also we have Convivio coming up on January the 25th at 6. And our next PTA conversations on March the 10th. And those will all be in the PTA newsletter that comes out every week.
So I apologize. Those are my dogs letting you all know that they haven't gotten pets from me today. So disculpen que mis perros están ladrando. Lo que había compartido es que el próximo evento del convivio va a tomar lugar el 25 de enero a las 6. Y la próxima junta de la PTA, conversaciones estilos como esta, va a ser el 10 de marzo a las 6. Y esta información va a ser publicada por la PTA a través de diferentes medios.
Just want to thank you all. And remember, we are in this together. I know it's really hard and every family needs something super different and is concerned about something super different. And we're also balancing making sure our staff is safe and cared for as well. So thank you guys for your patience. We will continue to keep you updated as much as we can. We don't always have all the information either, but we will get you everything as quick as we can. And we commit to trying to be really thoughtful and strategic and listening to all the voices of our community as we plan the rollout for returning to school.
So, queremos darles las gracias a todos ustedes. Agradecemos todo el trabajo que han hecho en apoyar a sus estudiantes. Yo y Megan nos comprometemos a compartir con ustedes toda la información que podamos cuando la tengamos para que tengamos una comunidad informada. Nosotros estamos dedicados a que podemos hacer lo mejor para los estudiantes y a la vez también mantener a todos nuestros maestros sanos y seguros. Realmente son tiempos pesados, pero juntos podemos superar todo esto.